Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing one of the last real hidden gem ski resorts out there, Kirkwood. Kirkwood is really known for its intense expert terrain, being one of the most challenging resorts in the country. Although it gets overshadowed by the legendary steeps of Palisades Tahoe, Kirkwood offers terrain that rivals the toughest lines in Palisades. In this video we'll be discussing only what you need to know to make the most of your Kirkwood visit. When it comes to Kirkwood, there's a lot to talk about, so this episode will be divided into 4 parts. For this part, we'll cover the Timber Creek and Mountain Village areas. We'll work through the rest of the mountain in subsequent parts. So with that, let's begin in Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Kirkwood. In general, driving to Kirkwood, or the Wood as it's called by locals, is not practical unless you live in the Bay Area or the surrounding areas. If you live in these aforementioned areas, the drive here is pretty rough, which keeps a lot of people away, although crowds have been getting worse in recent years. Thanks a lot, Vale. Most people coming from out of state should fly into Reno and then drive through Tahoe, which starts off easy but gets harder as you get closer to Kirkwood. Parking at Kirkwood is relatively straightforward despite Vale's horrendous parking reservation system that was introduced for the 2023-24 ski season. Kirkwood has 3 primary parking zones: Timber Creek, Village Parking, and Main Parking. The Timber Creek parking lot isn't desirable unless you're a beginner or low intermediate looking to prioritize this zone. For all other guests, I would not recommend parking here. The Village parking costs $35 per the day and allows you to park right next to Chair 6 and Chair 5. The location is pretty great and offers a very short walk to the lifts, although it isn't really worth its cost. Most guests coming to Kirkwood should aim to park in the main parking lot. It's about a 5 to 7 minute walk from the lifts, and there are free shuttles to take you to Mountain Village. Note that it's not depicted on the map, but the village and lifts sit a bit higher than the parking lots. A few general things to mention before we dive into the mountain specifics. Kirkwood's trail map is a little unintuitive and leaves several signature lines unmarked. The map is not to scale in some spots and flat out inaccurate in others. Also note that any lift that doesn't have the word Express in it is a fixed grip lift. Finally, for this Insider's Guide, we'll generally move from the looker's right to the looker's left on the trail map. Kirkwood has 2 primary base areas, Timber Creek and Mountain Village. Let's start with Timber Creek base. It has 2 main lifts, chairs 9 and 7. Lifts 12 and 13 are magic carpets and not really worth talking about. As previously mentioned, Timber Creek in general is much more beginner and low intermediate focused. Chair 9, Bunny, is the mountain's bunny hill. Although Kirkwood in general is not ideal for beginners, it still has a few beginner trails. Chair 9 has 3 marked green trails, although there is a brief 4th one between Funny Bunny and School Run that's unmarked. Graduation is the easiest run in the area, although it sometimes can see traffic from Chair 7. Overall, this is a solid bunny hill that's well isolated from the rest of the mountain. Chair 7, Timber Creek Express, is one of 2 high-speed quads at Kirkwood. Kirkwood's intermediate terrain in general is harder than the average resort's intermediate terrain. Chair 7 is an exception to this, as it serves some of the best low intermediate terrain at the resort. Squirrel Ridge is the only beginner run off Chair 7, and it's a little harder than the beginner runs off Chair 9 as it's a little narrower and longer. This is a good one to do once you feel comfortable with all the beginner runs on Chair 9. Trench of Terror and Ditch of Doom are 2 intermediate natural halfpipes. Kirkwood has a bunch of these, and we'll talk about the rest of them later on. Free and Easy starts out as a great low intermediate groomer, but then filters into the lower level Bandit Terrain Park. While we're on the subject, while Kirkwood builds some okay terrain parks, they're not a good reason alone to visit. Hole in the Wall is the signature cruiser in this terrain pod and is my personal favorite run in the Timber Creek zone, although it is the most popular. Up and Over is a short but slightly steeper blue run that allows you to lap the lower section of Home Run or take Jane's Jaunt to the Mountain Village side. The lower part of Home Run is fun, although it's the main road for people coming from Mountain Village to Timber Creek, and as such gets skied out towards the end of the day when everyone's trying to come back. There are 2 ways to get to Mountain Village from Timber Creek: Jane's Jaunt and Jamby's Jaunt. Jane's Jaunt, which is the same thing as this to Chairs 5 and 6 traverse, is the way that I highly recommend. Although it's a bit flatter up top, it allows you to access Chair 5 and Chair 6 without any catwalking at the bottom. Jamby's Jaunt is a bit more hidden and also forces you to ski the lower section of this black lower Olympic. In addition, it only allows you to reach Chair 6. You'll have to sidestep uphill to reach Chair 5. One downside with the Chair 7 terrain is that a lot of the Sentinel Bowl terrain filters into it via Stump Run. Stump Run cuts across a lot of the Chair 7 terrain, which can be a little nerve-wracking for guests skiing Chair 7. This could be a downside depending on who you are, but the runs off Chair 7 are also pretty short. Kirkwood in general is not the place for long runs. I wouldn't recommend skiing Timber Creek unless you're a beginner or low intermediate. It's better to head straight to the lifts in Mountain Village. That wraps up the Timber Creek zone. Let's now move on to Mountain Village. Mountain Village is the heart of Kirkwood and is where most guests will and should begin their day. The Mountain Village base has 5 main lifts that lead out of it. For this part of the guide, we'll be talking about 3 of these lifts, Chair 5, Chair 11, and Chair 1. We'll talk about the legendary Chairs 6 and 10 in parts B and C. Chair 5, Solitude, primarily services intermediate terrain. This intermediate terrain is steeper than the runs found off Chair 7, but not as steep as intermediate runs found elsewhere at the resort. All of the runs feel pretty similar, although Lower Zachary is the widest of the bunch. Lower Zachary gets skied out the fastest, as Upper Zachary is arguably the most popular run at Kirkwood. If you're trying to head from Mountain Village to Timber Creek as an intermediate, the best way to do it is to take Lower Zachary to Home Run. The sign for Home Run is pretty easy to miss, so hang skiers left of the trail and look for it. Although unmarked, there is a run that was formerly named Race Course that leads into the Outlaw Park. Outlaw Park is definitely the bigger of the 2 parks at Kirkwood. However, as previously mentioned, if you're coming to Kirkwood for the parks, you're doing it wrong. Mokalumna is probably my favorite of these Chair 5 blues, as it's got some really playful trees you can ski in and out of. Less people also seem to ski it in comparison to the other Chair 5 blues. Lower Monty Wolf is mostly left ungroomed, which makes it a great first bump run for intermediates to try. The big issue with Chair 5 is that all the runs have the advanced runs from Chair 6 filtering into it. In addition, you'll have a lot of beginners coming into this area when they're obviously not ready for it, which can make for some pretty hilarious yard sales. Chair 5 is also home to some of the longer lift lines at Kirkwood, and unlike other lifts, these lines don't really die out, so there's no great time to ski it unless you go for it first thing in the day. Chair 11, the Rayut, is one of the best high intermediate low advanced chairs at Kirkwood. If you're comfortable with every other blue on the mountain, this is the chair to try your first black. As mentioned earlier, the trail map is pretty inaccurate in some spots, and this is one of them. From the top of the Rayut, although it doesn't look possible, there is a very obvious flat traverse to the blue buckboard. The trees on the map that separate buckboard from Snowsnake Gully at the top don't exist in real life. This map is also inaccurate with the fact that you can pretty much drop into Snowsnake Gully directly off the lift. Buckboard is similar in pitch to some of the blues off of Chair 5, but is a little bit longer. This is my favorite blue run on the front side of the mountain and can be a great warm-up run. Although you can't hit Dick's Drop from Chair 11, you can access an area denoted by a cliff sign that's adjacent to Dick's. As mentioned earlier, Snowsnake Gully can be accessed directly off the lift and is one of several natural halfpipes at Kirkwood. You'll sometimes see people launching themselves off the traverse above the gully and throwing down some tricks. Snowsnake Gully is my personal favorite natural halfpipe at Kirkwood, as there are plenty of fun little rock drops on the side of the run that you can hit. Wagon Trail is probably the easiest single black diamond groomer in all of Kirkwood. Don't get me wrong, it still has a few steep sections, but it's definitely the best advanced groomer to try after you're comfortable with all the blues at Kirkwood. Short Spoke can be found off Wagon Trail by heading skiers right at an intersection. However, this run is always closed for racing, and in my many visits to Kirkwood, I haven't done it once. Conestoga and Shotgun are some of the quieter trails at Kirkwood, as they take a bit of a traverse to get to, in what is known as the Caples Crest Traverse. This traverse does not show up on the trail map, but it essentially allows you to take Chair 11 and ski directly to Chair 2, which we'll discuss in Part D. To get to this traverse, take Wagon Trail down a few hundred feet, and then head skiers right when you see the obvious gap in the tree line. Conestoga will be the first run that you come across, and this run is typically left ungroomed in the early season, and groomed semi-frequently in the core season. It's a bit steeper and more sustained than Wagon Trail, but it is a good next step up. Shotgun is a steep mogul run that feels extremely isolated at an already very remote mountain. This is also a great run to scope out some of the perilous lines in Norm's Nose area, which we'll discuss in Part C. If both Conestoga and Shotgun are too steep, you can bail by taking the Caples Crest Traverse all the way down. Note that although the Caples Crest Traverse is the primary way to access Conestoga and Shotgun, you can take an unnamed traverse directly off Chair 11. Unlike the Caples Crest Traverse, this traverse does require some uphill sidestepping. With this traverse, you'll be able to access an upper section of both Conestoga and Shotgun that you cannot access via the Caples Crest Traverse. You can also access some of these lower cliff drops and straight lines at the bottom half of Norm's Nose. Note that at the bottom of all of these Chair 11 runs, you will be filtering quickly onto the flat beginner run Hay Flat, so be mindful of your speed. Chair 1 is the other beginner pot at Kirkwood and is definitely a bit more challenging and less isolated than the beginner terrain found off Chair 9. This chair only services 2 runs, Snowkirk and Hayflat. If you're transitioning from the runs off Chair 9, Hayflat is the better place to start. As indicated in its name, it's pretty flat and is definitely the easier of the 2 runs found on this lift. Snowkirk is a little steeper than Hayflat, but is still very mellow and even wider than Hayflat. I definitely prefer Snowkirk. Chair 1 does offer some solid beginner terrain, however, the glaring issue with this zone is that almost everyone coming from the backside in Capel's Crest zone will have to ski Hayflat, which can be unsettling for those learning. Even though Kirkwood's not a beginner mountain by any means, it's also frustrating that its 2 beginner zones are not connected by any green trails. To get from Chair 1 to Chair 9 as a beginner, you'll have to walk across the parking lot. Well, that's about it for the Timber Creek and Mountain Village areas. Go check out parts B, C, and D now, all about the rest of the mountain. As always, please leave any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.